This fitness coach hired me to help him scale his business and landed his first 3 high-ticket clients in just a week, while being a complete beginner, only having 1,000 followers and averaging 300 views per video. If you take a look here, these are the screenshots. This was 22 booked calls during the launch week, so it was a 7-day period. And this is also his text to me about him landing his first high-ticket client. And in this video, I'm showing you exactly how we did it and the exact process we took to help him scale. And so what you're gonna get from this video is you're gonna be getting a full step-by-step breakdown with proven tactical advice for how we scaled my client's offer by 300%, the exact hybrid profile funnel system that we use, and exactly how to implement it for yourself so that you can get the same results or even better. And my goal by the end of this video is that you have a strong enough understanding of our system, how it works, and how to implement it to go ahead and replicate it for yourself to scale your own business. Again, people pay me thousands of dollars to have this stuff implemented for them, but I'm giving you all the information away completely for free. All they ask is that you give me the next 25 to 30 minutes of your full attention. And so without wasting any more time, let's get started. And I want to preface just by saying that this is going to be kind of a boring video, but if you're the kind of person who can stick around during this kind of video and actually gather the information, then I have no doubt that you're going to scale. Okay, so let's just get started and get straight into it. And get started with the starting point, aka where my client was before he came to me. So originally he came to me burnt, right? After having invested thousands into mentorships from so-called authorities in the space, he didn't get any results from it, right? He stayed stuck and he got generic group coaching and stalled for a while because of it. I'm not going to call anybody out, but if I'm not mistaken, he invested into 2 mentors who essentially gave him group coaching that was not valuable at all. It was very cookie cutter advice. So yeah, he stayed stalled for a while because of that. The second thing is that he was lost, right? Overall, he came to us after just starting coaching, right? But he didn't have any structure, right? He didn't have a clear roadmap or system, and he didn't have any of the foundations laid out. Like, he literally just came to us with a clean slate. All he had was 1,000 followers, a couple posts on his page, and that's pretty much it. And finally, he was stuck, right? He tried a bunch of different content formats. He built his own landing page in VSL, and overall tried a bunch of different things but lacked direction, leading him to being stuck and nothing working for him, right? Which is completely understandable, and this is what we helped him fix. All right, so I have a lot to talk about in this video, and I don't want to waste any time, so let's just get straight into it with the foundations, okay, section 1. So the very first thing that we did with this client is set the foundations, right? Because this is the core that the business sits on. It's also the principles that carry over to every other part of the business. And so the very first part of the foundation phase is the offer mastery. We went over and rebuilt his entire offer. This consisted of every key component of a good offer: timelines, investments, process, etc. And again, before working with us, he was running an extremely low ticket offer with no clear outcome, process, or structure. If I'm not mistaken, he was selling like $150 for 3 months of coaching, which is ridiculous. That's just besides the point. We went back in and we rebuilt his entire offer from scratch. We helped not only rebuild his offer again, but create a unique mechanism that made him stand out amongst the thousands of other coaches and lean heavily into his unique selling points so that we can use that to market his offer as something new. This is one of the biggest problems that I see in saturated markets in general, especially info. It's the fact that every single day there are thousands and thousands of coaches posting content. And the only way for you to stand out is to have a unique selling point. Because prospects today are not only the most sophisticated that they ever have been, but they're also the least trustworthy that they ever have been. And so we need to craft a unique mechanism, which basically plays into the belief that the reason that they potentially have failed in other endeavors or other offers is because they were using the old mechanism that somebody else was using and not this new one that we have, right? That's what separates us and creates a USP. And so we went back in, created this entire offer sheet and offer deck, and created a grand slam offer plus his unique mechanism that we can use for later. Now, the second part of the foundation phase is the ICP profile. So again, we went back, we drafted his entire ICP profile from scratch. Originally, he was trying to sell to everybody, right? He was trying to market to a broad audience, which left him stuck because he was spreading himself thin and there was no specificity or speciality in his offer or his messaging or his targeting, etc. Because the problem is people aren't looking for generalists anymore. They're looking for specialists. And that's why we helped him create a brand new ICP profile and dream follower profile that resonated with him and his story so that they defaulted to him as the logical next step in their journey. Okay, that's a really important part of this because the goal is with your brand, you want to create such good resonance with your audience and you want to know your dream followers so well that you can close in the DMs and also hop on sales calls with 0 objections. That's the end goal. So again, we went ahead, drafted his entire ICP profile, rebuilt his entire ICP and dream follower, and this left us with these 2 profiles that we're going to use for later. Now, the third section of the foundation phase is the client story. Now, this is something super important that nobody talks about, right? So we dove deep into his story, what made him unique, his upbringing, his losses, his struggles, his wins, everything that made him, right? And this is the most important piece of the foundation. This is the core that builds everything around it, right? The content strategy, the ICP, the offer, the marketing, etc. This is literally the backbone of his entire business. And so we created an entire full story profile of him and extracted the key pieces that we needed, as well as the brand outliers that we needed to make him stand out in a saturated market. People do not buy into companies, they don't buy into offers, they don't buy into logos, they buy into people, right? And the more that people know you, trust you, and understand your story, are people who are ready to buy. And so we went in, created an entire story document with all the information that we would ever need to draft basically everything, the copy, the content, everything, right? And this gave us a full marketing and USP asset, again, for later. Now, the final part of the foundation phase was the competitive market. This is, again, something nobody talks about, but is one of the most high impact things that you can do during a foundation phase. So we took a look at the competitive market and environment that he was inside of, right? We studied his competitors, similar offers, coaches with similar physiographics and psychographics. I'm talking ethnicity, physique, follower count, everything, right? Everything was taken into account, and even his inspiration and industry leaders in his niche. And again, we defined who are his competitors, how can we be better, how is the market perceiving and interacting with content in his niche, how we could stand out, how we could implement winning strategies, etc. And so then we created an entire competitive market sheet, which gave us all the information and data that we needed to craft a winning strategy. Now, once that we have these 4 pillars in place for the foundations, the offer mastery, the ISP profile, the client story, and the competitive market, we then officially have the foundations, right? And in the end of this process, we are left with the information and strategy to go ahead and build the tower, aka the business that sits on this foundation. It's pretty straightforward, but you cannot skip a foundation phase. I even preface with my client, like, this is going to be a very boring process, but it's also the most important process, because the more that we can pull out of this foundation phase, the more we can use for copy, for content, for funnels, etc. You cannot build a Burj Khalifa on a broken foundation. Now, once we have the foundations in place, we then moved on to the content strategy, okay? Now, this is a big one. With content being the main source of traffic into his pipeline, we need a good strategy to attract the right people and as many of them as possible into his hybrid profile funnel. Not only this, but crafting a full content guide helped our client remove all the friction that came with content creation, not having to guess what to post, and getting the best result with the least amount of work. And so the first thing we did with the content strategy was go over the basics. The very first thing was plan out the content schedule, the frequency, to essentially eliminate guesswork, set goals and expectations as well as standards, connect the foundations with his content strategy, and optimize his Instagram profile. We covered every basic touch point to remove all friction and make it as easy as possible to scale our client. The rudimental sticks and stones things like these basics are what creates a good personal brand. And if you want to scale as a coach, you can't be spreading yourself thin, thinking about all these different things, thinking about ideating, thinking about setting goals, expectations, connecting all these different pillars and moving pieces, right? Ideally, you want to get to a point where the only things that you're doing is filming content and coaching your students. And the second pillar of the content strategy is the actual strategy. Now, I'm going to get more into depth in the next section after this, but essentially, we went deep into his content strategy. We defined his exact messaging and targeting, defining the most high impact topics and sub niches to speak about, introduced our content funnel structure to him. We defined and created SOPs for every single section of the funnel and covered every single part of the strategy, from when somebody first sees his content and his face to the moment that they close. We cover the entire A to Z process of content creation to maximize the amount of ICP and dream follower profiles coming into his page and going through the funnel and eventually getting on calls. And so again, I'm going to get more in depth later on, but that's the brief overview. And the final thing is we strategically planned the tactics. These are like the little intricacies between the big parts of the strategy that tied all this together, right? And so these are the content formats, the exact formats to use and to deliver the best results. Full content calendars, outlines and planned posts, ManyChat automations, story sequences and highlights planned out, as well as a valuable lead magnet that we helped him craft to use as a freebie to engage with prospects, right? And so having these intricacies dialed in ensures that no matter what touch point, prospects are still being warmed up, they're still being booked on the calls, and they're still being closed. All right, so now I'm going to go more in depth into the actual content strategy and kind of how it all works, right? So the first thing that we do is build a content ecosystem. How does this work? So essentially, the reason why we build a content ecosystem and not just rely on one platform like YouTube or Instagram is because if we tie back to one of the key principles in info right now, it's the fact that we are in a trust recession. Prospects need to spend approximately 7 hours with you before they trust you enough to buy into what you're selling. Creating a content ecosystem like this one ensures that you maximize that amount of time while also pre-selling your prospects, so that when they get on the call faster, but then also are pre-sold, they don't give you a million objections, and it's an easy close. So the first traffic source is the Instagram content and existing audience, and the second one is your YouTube organic. Now these both feed into 2 different paths. So the first path for Instagram is once somebody gets onto the content or through a profile visit ad, whatever the case is, they get onto your Instagram profile, which is essentially a landing page, right? We intentionally engineer the profiles, like my clients, to deposit the most amount of trust and authority possible through story highlights, pinned posts, profile pictures, everything, even bios. This acts as another trust building, time spending, authority building process and mechanism that we can use to pre-sell prospects. The second thing is a lead magnet CTA. So this is just another way of giving free value, engaging with prospects, starting conversations, and building that trust and authority. Now, if we go over to the long form YouTube side, we create a flywheel system. Now, I'm not going to go too in depth about this entire funnel system and how it works. If you want to know more about that, you can check out the last video. I'll put it in the description. This is more about my client's case study, but the point is, this flywheel system maximizes the amount of time spent with prospects, builds that trust and authority, and actually pre-handles objections. But the way it works condensed down pretty simply is that there's one main video being his like organic VSL, and then every single video on his channel links to that video. And the goal with this all is that this video is essentially like an evergreen asset booking calls for you, or like even you can imagine it as like a sales employee just sitting there 24/7 booking calls for you months, maybe even years down the line. And the reason why an organic VSL works so well is because people have seen landing pages and sales pages a million times, right? It's nothing new. There's so much pressure in having like a guard up when you're on a page versus just watching a YouTube video, right? And that's why it works so well. Now, from these two traffic sources, being YouTube organic, the flywheel system, as well as the Instagram content, the Instagram profile, the lead magnet CTA, it all moves down to the nurturing process, which is super simple. Essentially, there's two paths. Again, there is the YouTube flywheel, which is again just the organic VSL, building trust, belief, spending time with the prospect, etc. And then also our 7-day story sequence calendar. Stories are the most intimate touch point on Instagram. And if you crack them right, they basically become free ads toward your most warm prospects. Like, that's pretty crazy to think about. So this is the exact story sequence structure that we use for our client. Firstly, Monday. You're going to start off with a client result plus a DM CTA. And you're basically sharing your most up-to-date or best client result through a sequence with a CTA to DM you a keyword. This starts conversations and books calls. That's it. Now for Tuesday, it's a value bomb. Because again, you can't just be throwing CTAs every single day. That will burn out your audience. And again, it's everybody's seen it before. Nobody's falling for the I have 5 spots left. You need to be giving value as well, because that's what creates reciprocity pressure, which essentially is a pressure on your audience to reciprocate a favor to you once you've given them so much free value. That's unreasonable for them not to. And now for Wednesday, we have a personal story sequence. It could be anything. This is more so getting you into the habit of posting stories. So for me, I posted a video of just me talking to the camera. This could be like an inspiring moment that will inspire your audience, create connection. Because again, people buy into people who they know and trust, but also like, right? This is creating the like aspect. You could have the two other things, but if you don't create resonance and likability in yourself through your stories, then you're going to end up burning your audience out again, and they're not going to know you well enough to get on a call with you or even want to get on a call with you. Now for Thursday, it's a personal win. This can be pretty much anything. This could be a personal achievement, a payment screenshot, literally anything. You have to show your wins too, and not just your clients, because that positions you as an authority. Now for Friday, it's a soft CTA with a lead magnet. So you actually can't read this image, but essentially you want to be giving them some sort of free value, maybe like a SOP, a lead magnet, a free guide. And the point is you're building that reciprocity pressure, but you're gonna create a second slide where you just give them a soft CTA, be like, by the way, this is just this video condensed into text form. If you want to know the full breakdown of everything, go watch this video. That's kind of how it would work, right? And then you just link them to any video. Ideally, it's your organic VSL. Now, finally, for Saturday and Sunday, it's a freestyle. You can post whatever you want. And the goal is just to build the habit of creating your own ideas. But this can literally be anything as long as it doesn't like fuck up your reputation, right? So this could be like the gym, this could be you cooking, you without with family, whatever the case is. And so now, once you have the prospects fully nurtured through the 7-day story sequence, as well as YouTube flywheel video, we move on to the next section, which is the funnel ecosystem. So how does the funnel ecosystem work? Now, once we have the content strategy and flywheel system in place, bringing in prospects into the pipeline, the next step is the conversion mechanism and the funnel ecosystem to turn every single prospect that keeps coming in into a warmed up booked call on our calendar. And so for this system, we primarily use 2 main funnels, right? Obviously we have the content funnels and the mini ones and etc. But we have a free training book a call funnel as well as an IG DM funnel. We create a dual system to ensure that lead and call flow is never dependent on a single source so that it can actually be scaled. And so how it would look is that once people come in for the content, they're coming from the nurturing process, etc., they go into 2 paths again. And that's the IG DM funnel and the free training funnel. So for the Instagram DM funnel, the goal is really simple. It's to engage with the audience through DM one-to-one conversations, as well as use the voice note method to book more calls. And the triggers for this could be outbound. It's like following people, likes, viewing their story, DMing them, as well as inbound. So content, lead magnet, stories, etc. And the entire funnel. Now, again, I'm not going to break this down super in depth because it's kind of more for the clients. It's kind of private as well. But create a custom DM sending flow plus a voice note system if needed. And this is essentially your conversion mechanism. And this is like a classic funnel. This works time and time again. As long as you have a good setter or a good setting flow, it works. Now on the other side, is the free training funnel. And the goal is to nurture, pre-sell, and pre-objection handle prospects and get them to book calls. The process is pretty simple. It's so your traffic source going to your landing page, watching your VSL, filling in the application, booking a call, going to the pre-call page, going through the email sequence, and then getting on the call. This funnel typically creates the most warmed up and qualified prospects to actually get on calls. So this is the funnel that we actually built for my client. It's a free training funnel, very simple, with a application attached to it, as well as a Calendly embed inside of the form. Now, although copy is super important, the overall most important piece of the funnel is the VSL / the free training / the book call video, whatever the case is. And again, I'm not going to break down exactly how to script a VSL or do anything like that. I will have another video like that coming out soon, but I also go way more in depth in my last video if you want to check that out again. And finally, once they book a call, they get sent to a confirmation page / pre-call page before actually getting on the call. And this is mine, so I can show you. Basically. And so once the lead actually books a call, they get sent to the pre-call page. This is one of the biggest things that most people ignore. 90% of coaches just get a book call and treat it like a done deal up until the actual call. They might send like an email 30 minutes beforehand saying, get on this call, reminder, etc. What you need to be doing is implementing this pre-call page. So essentially, now this first video should be giving them clarity and breaking down your offer. This video firstly removes buyer remorse because people don't like booking calls. They don't like giving commitments. They don't like giving their information. As soon as they book a call, you should be reaffirming their decision so that it eliminates their buyer's remorse and they still show up to the call, instead of just booking a call, having nothing to see, thinking over it for the hours or days leading up to the call, and then eventually no showing. And the second thing this video does is run the prospect through your offer. The goal at the end of the day is no sales calls. But when you do a hop on sales calls, you don't want to be spending a whole 30 minutes explaining your offer, breaking it down, remembering the pitch, remembering this, remembering that. If they've watched the video beforehand, they understand the process, they know how it works. The only thing that they're going to ask you is a couple of personal key questions that are maybe more unique to them, which you can easily answer and kind of work your way around that for an easy close. Okay. Now, the second step is just simple. It's just to confirm their call just so it shows up on their calendar. Again, reducing the no-show rate. Now, the final thing is the breakout videos. So the way I like to frame this is kind of like an FAQ, get your questions answered section. Really, it's just pre-handling objections. And the goal is that you're not just answering or pre-handling the objection in and of itself. You need to treat every single breakout video like a mini VSL, where you're showing proof, pre-handling the objection, building belief and trust, all those different things, maximizing every single possibility to actually get them to show up to the call as pre-sold and warm as possible. So that is the entire pre-call page. And if you want to know more about the actual email sequence that we use prior to this pre-call page, then just watch the other video again. Shameless plug, but yeah. And so once we have lead flow coming in from both funnels, we now get booked calls. So then once we have this funnel ecosystem built out, you might be wondering, what do we actually do to begin marketing it? Let's say we have all this stuff built out. What do we do next, right? And this is actually where the real magic happens, and also where my clients started seeing real results for the first time. And so this brings us to our 7-day launch sequence. And the goal with the launch sequence is to tease the public release of the funnel through an early access teaser sequence. We kind of treat it like a movie trailer where we run a 7-day hype phase with our free training funnel on private with a pre-launch cohort, right? So we're running it to early access applicants, building as much FOMO and anticipation as possible by hosting story sequences with sneak peeks baked into the story sequences. And essentially the goal is that this will build a pipeline of warm priority prospects who get early access and build FOMO with the remaining audience, right? So we privately launched his free training funnel with an application plus collected emails for nurturing. So later on, if they don't decide to book a call, we can continue retargeting and nurturing them. And then during the build phase, we also crafted a pre-launch bonus for early applicants just to incentivize people to book in early, right? And again, we ran story sequences, hype teasers, and we had leads opting in to the private launch and prioritized, who then became the first ones often to book first calls. The second part is the hype sequence. So again, we ran a 7-day story sequence, building as much anticipation as FOMO possible. So we're teasing private calls, we're teasing early results for our clients, we're building urgency, we're giving a timeline of this is gonna end this time, and building that much FOMO and urgency for people to get in while they still can, right? And so this ends up with us getting the early access cohort and landing our first 3 high ticket clients on this offer. Again, we booked 22 calls during that early access cohort period. And yeah, he closed his first 3 high ticket clients. This is the message he sent me. So it's pretty sick. Now, here's the thing I want you to understand, okay? So like by now you understand the exact process we took to take my client from completely a beginner to landing his first 3 high ticket clients in his first week. Now, here's the thing I want you to remember. He came to us with 1,000 followers and averaging 300 videos on every single reel. Yet with this system, we were still able to help him scale. Now, just imagine what the system could do with just 5x the traffic and personal brand. But either way, that's not the point. The point is you've seen the system, you know how it works, and you know how to replicate it for yourself. Now, you can either go ahead and actually try to do it yourself, spend the 6 months learning the intricacies of funnels, backend, content systems, etc. Or if you wanted us to build it properly for you the first time and turn your personal brand into a client acquisition machine, then feel free to book in a consultation with us. We'll fully audit your current business and funnel, see what your biggest bottlenecks are, and give you a clear roadmap to scale to your goal. Anyway, that is the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got value from it, and I will see you guys in the next one.